Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. Jacalyn KERBECK, and we are coming to you live today from London in the United Kingdom. Our show is The Power of Etiquette and Manners. And today we have a very special episode for you. It's afternoon tea with the Train the Trainer graduates and also an expert from Twinings Tea. And also we have someone who is a camera confidence coach. So let's get the show going. Joining us is the star of our show and also the sponsor from the British School of Excellence. His name is Mr. Philip Sykes, president and founder of the British School of Excellence. He is joined by a number of people in the room today. Let's welcome them to the show.
Dr. Jacalyn, it's Friday.
Friday!
Where's the week gone? Where's the week gone? It's an absolute joy and pleasure to be joining all our listeners and new listeners and welcoming you to our show. And I do pray and hope that you hit the subscribe button, hit that bell, and get notified whenever we are running a show. And as Dr. Jacalyn said, this is the power of etiquette and manners and how we can make a difference in this world. And this week, we've been on an incredible journey with 4 dynamic students on our Train the Trainer program. And in the room, I'd like to make an introduction. The first introduction is Liam, who's not a Train the Trainer student, but we've engaged on numerous occasions in discussing tea and the world of tea and the history behind it. And we have Liam joining us today, who brings such a plethora of knowledge. He's like a walking encyclopedia. Then on the left of Liam is ANAHITA. ANAHITA all the way from India. India all the way. Which part of India are you from?
Bangalore.
Bangalore. And then Dr. ONIKE. Here we have Dr. ONIKE, who is, well, a world traveler. That's all I can say. I don't even know where to position you. You're here, you're there, you're everywhere. And a pleasure to have you engaging with us all the way from where you flew in from. And then my colleague Leanne, who is the backbone behind the organization and does all the operations. And then all the way over in South Africa, we have the wonderful ZUNETTE coming in from Somerset West, who has joined us this week and has been very tolerant, as well as salivating from behind the camera, because we've been very fortunate to have a few little snacks during the class. And if I may say so, the other student that joined us this week is the one and only Dr. Jacalyn.
It has been an absolute pleasure, Philip. I can't explain to people who are watching or listening. You and I have known each other for about 4 years. You've been with me since the beginning when it was Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. And we together have grown this platform. And what an honor to be able to attend your course to become a certified etiquette coach myself. I can't wait to incorporate this so that all of our guests on USA Global TV and Radio, as well as our team, have an opportunity to learn about emotional intelligence and all of the components of etiquette and manners. So thank you again for this beautiful opportunity.
Wonderful. It's an absolute pleasure. And without further ado, Dr. Jacalyn, may we give Liam the reins?
Absolutely. Take it away, Liam.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. So I
presently work for the Twinings Tea Company. I'm one of the senior brand ambassadors who works at our 216 Strand premises, Twinings only and historic store. There's no other physical location anywhere in the world we can go to get Twinings tea specifically from the Twinings stores, and we've been there for over 318 years. So while we have a lot of history as a company, it's important when discussing the etiquette around tea to go all the way back and develop a full appreciation for tea as a whole, historically and culturally. So I'm actually going to start with a little breakdown of the history of tea, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to shout them out to me, but otherwise I'm just going to keep waffling on.
And believe you me, he waffles, not waffles, but he definitely will give you an amazing run for your money.
So, tea as a commodity is over 5,000 years old. To this day, it is still the only drink that is drunk more than anything else on earth except for water. The human race consumes water as the only thing more than tea. All the other drinks combined don't even come close. More specifically, we're going back to ancient China when it comes to the origins of tea. Around 2737 BC, that's when we have the first recorded instances of tea being brewed as we would know it today. The story of how tea got started, it does depend, depending on which bit of folklore or mythology you're referencing, but most trace their lineage back to the character of Shennong, or Shennong, depending on pronunciation and dialect. He is alternatively known as the Emperor of the Five Grains or the Divine Husbandman. And again, depending on your mythology, he is either one of the very earliest pre-ancient Chinese emperors, predating, in some cases, the written Chinese language, or a full-fledged demigod-like entity who taught the people of ancient China the secrets of agriculture and herbal medicine. How did he learn the secrets of herbal medicine, I hear you ask? Simple. He ate every single kind of plant that he came across. He consumed all of this different vegetation, and he supposedly had a glass stomach. He could see through his belly into his internal organs, and by consuming the plants and just seeing what they did inside him, he supposedly learned the various healthful and toxic properties of various flora and fauna. The story goes that while he is sampling his way through the flora of Yunnan in southwestern China, one day he has tried 76 different kinds of plants. Unsurprisingly, he has managed to poison himself, as some of them were not beneficial to the human body. And in desperation, he does the next logical thing. He reaches out and grabs another set of leaves from another bush. After consuming these leaves, they of course sink down into that glass stomach of his, and they begin to boil inside his body thanks to the light of the sun. Of course, these happen to be, by pure chance, tea leaves, and they purify the toxins from his body. I must stress, tea is a wonderful substance. It's a brilliant drink full of all sorts of vitamins, polyphenols, flavonoids that we want to make use of. It's not an antitoxin. It's not going to do what the story of Shennong did. But after sampling this brew, Shennong pronounces it healthful and beneficial and medicinal, and teaches the secrets of tea brewing to the rest of his students, who pass it out throughout ancient China. Throughout the different dynasties, the Chinese have had developing relationships with tea until they get to what we would recognize as kind of contemporary Chinese tea culture. Although back with the Han dynasty, they're using tea much as Shennong had intended, as a herbal or medicinal brew. Strong green teas that would then be steamed, pressed into solid bricks, blocks, or discs, to make them easy for transport, and then sent out across the Chinese kingdoms. They would also then add other things like other herbs or other fruits, really trying to hone in on the medicinal properties that they believed that the tea had. After the Han, we move into the Tang dynasty, and the Tang were the first to start exporting China's tea, although only terrestrially. They're shipping their tea from China to places like Mongolia, Nepal, and Tibet over the Himalayan mountains, journeys that could take upwards of 8 months to complete. And during this time, these packages of green tea are going through different pockets of hot, cold, wet, dry, humid, frosty, arid weather conditions. The tea that starts its journey in China has undergone a complete chemical metamorphosis by the time it reaches places as far afield as Tibet, becoming a dark, fermented form of tea. Fortunately, Tibetans were quite fond of this particular kind of tea, and it's still drunk today. It's called po cha, and it is brewed for about half a day until it's really, really thickly concentrated and then churned in tall wooden butter churns with yak butter for preference. So it makes more of a thin, nourishing soup than a cup of tea as we might be more familiar with British afternoon tea, for example. After we move out of the Tang, all of that trade has gone to good use and the Song dynasty comes into power. The Song is where we really start to see the first form of unified China, and there's a lot more time for poetry and music and art and culture, especially around tea. It's when we first get the first tea houses that begin to spring up, and the first stylings of the Chinese tea ceremony, what we call Gong Fu or Kung Fu style tea. It is worth clarifying, Kung Fu tea does not mean there is martial arts involved in the tea making. Kung Fu literally means to do with skill. So Gong Fu or Kung Fu tea is tea made with skill. And there is a great degree of skill and practice that goes into a full Chinese style tea ceremony. The Song dynasty is also where we start to see tea moving away from being purely medicinal in something that's a symbol of status and prestige. If you can afford to spend 3 to 4 hours sitting in one of the nice new tea houses, drinking tea, painting pictures, playing music and so on, you're probably doing quite well for yourself in the grand scheme of things. So as new forms of white teas and yellow teas are developed, these become symbols of status and prestige, while the traditional green and oolong teas tend to be more resigned to the lower classes for medicinal and herbal remedies. After the Song dynasty, the Mongol Empire then invades China, and sadly they have very little interest in the refined style of Song dynasty tea drinking, and they actually bring back with them that darkened tea that had been exported a few centuries prior by the Tang. The Mongolians call it ZUNETTE, and again, still brewed to this day in a very traditional form. It's usually brewed up for, again, about half a day or so, and then infused with yak's milk, goat's milk, or fried millet. So another very interesting flavor combination for a cup of tea that you may not have come across before. Ultimately, the Mongol or Yuan dynasties give way to the Ming dynasty, mostly well known for their fabulous blue and white porcelain, but they're also massive pioneers in the sphere of tea. The Ming dynasty actually outlaws the traditional pressed tea cake design and gives us what we would consider traditional loose leaf tea, the form that we're most familiar with for high-class afternoon tea, especially over here in the UK. They also put a lot more emphasis on black tea. Why, if I may ask the question, why do you suppose black tea might suddenly have become a much more desirable commodity for ancient China? I say ancient China, we're coming into the 1600s.
No.
Does it improve your digestion?
Not specifically, no. But what black tea is much more chemically secured. Green tea is best consumed as fresh as possible due to the fact that it is non-oxidized. Black tea, being fully oxidized, has a much more locked chemical structure and thus is much more resistant to things like aroma and flavor changes if you're transporting it over long distances. As a result, if you're shipping tea from China to the Western world, a journey that could take up to 3 years in some instances, depending on the trade route, you didn't necessarily want the tea that you paid a lot of money for to absorb flavors of other things in the ship's hold, cargo like wood, stone, or livestock in the worst possible situations. Black tea then became a much preferred commodity when trading with the West. The first Western nations to start dealing in tea are believed to be the Dutch from the Netherlands. Some historians would argue that it was probably the Portuguese, but the Dutch have the first written record of tea being sold and traded. In 1606, a shipment of tea was brought back from China via the Dutch colonies in West Java in exchange for a shipment of sage herbs. So plants going in both directions, weirdly enough. What this means is that most of Western Europe started getting its first cups of tea about 1606 to around 1610, about half a century earlier than England would start importing tea in any significant measure. It may also surprise you guys to learn America had tea before England did, because the Dutch started exporting their teas from the Netherlands to what would later become the United States, but it's now Dutch colony, or was then Dutch colonies in the New World, places like New Amsterdam, later New York under British control. England, as I say, won't get any tea in earnest until the mid-1630s, thanks to the Dutch grip on the tea trade, and then it won't start selling it properly domestically until 1657. This was mainly thanks to the sudden uprising of coffee houses in the UK. Coffee houses became incredibly popular as coffee became a massively popular drink, especially among the upper echelons of the UK's working classes. Inns and taverns were quickly converted into coffee houses that served both alcohol and coffee. So already having a hot caffeinated beverage of choice, you might think there'll be very little space in the market for tea to ingratiate its way in. But characters like Thomas Garraway, who in 1657 started advertising the sale of loose leaf dry tea out of his coffee house, started using it as a gimmick, as their curiosity to draw in customers and compete with the other 2,000 coffee houses that were in central London at the time. It was absolutely jam-packed tight with coffee houses. These coffee houses were primarily masculine-dominated spaces, and they were primarily very mercantile-dominated spaces. They had become de facto locations for trade agreements, people who worked in the same spheres of industry to meet, negotiate, and inevitably argue while drinking coffee and getting very caffeinated, and drinking lots of alcohol and getting very drunk. So these were not really the kind of space you imagine sitting down with a nice genteel cup of tea, delicately sipping away. But nevertheless, as I say, Garraway and other pioneers like him started advertising the sales of tea through these coffee houses. Garraway, sadly, is no longer part of the London scene, although the original location is still marked by a nice etched stone plaque set on Exchange Alley, about 40 minutes west of where we're currently, no, 40 minutes east of where we're currently sitting, in fact, only a little bit further than Twinings itself. Twining was indeed a coffee house before it turned into a full-blown coffee shop, and for that we have to thank Thomas Twining, arguably the most famous tea merchant in the United Kingdom, possibly in the world. Twining purchased Tom's Coffee House back in 1706, and he started advertising the sale, like Garraway before him, of both loose leaf dry tea and the brewed drink for people to sample. However, tea was incredibly expensive. Due to import taxes levied by King Charles II, the import taxes on tea had climbed to over 119%. Since tea first made it to England's shores, it had become extortionately costly. The issue would have been fine, except for the fact that Charles II's wife, Catherine of Braganza, a Portuguese princess who had come over in 1662 to marry King Charles, had brought with her her Portuguese love of tea, making it incredibly popular among London's upper classes, especially among the ladies. As a result, tea was locked into Britain's upper crust for the next 200 years or so. That meant that the people who were primarily patronizing coffee houses like Tom's weren't really in a position to afford the incredibly expensive tea. So Twining started trying to gain access to the much deeper pockets on the Strand, that famous street that runs along the side of the Thames in East London. Twining realized if he wanted to really start making money from tea, he needed access to the richer pockets of those aristocrats who had moved into the northern side of London after things like the Great Fire wiped a lot of South London out. As a result, he buys his way through the building to get just a doorway onto the Strand itself. And that corridor, that passageway from Tom's to the Strand side doorway, is what comprises the contemporary 216 Strand store to this very day. So if you come and visit us in London, it's an incredibly slim store, but it goes back a very long way. Twining then started selling his tea directly to the very wealthy ladies of London who wanted to buy the tea and take it home for their own fledgling forms of what would later become afternoon tea. But it was not socially acceptable for ladies to go into coffee houses, as they were places of the working class, of fairly low repute and low standards. As a result, he did a bit of clever rebranding as the Golden Lion Tea and Coffee Shop in 1717. From going from a coffee house to a tea and coffee shop is apparently all it takes to make it socially acceptable for the ladies of London to come in and spend as much time and, more importantly, as much money on all the teas their hearts desire. Yeah, right. This was probably the first time that women had been allowed to go into a store that sold tea to pick and choose their own tea specifically. Up until this point, they'd had to send in male servants to go and get the teas for them, almost like a very, very early form of DoorDash for tea, in fact. Tea's popularity begins to absolutely soar, but those import taxes are still in place, and as a result, the black market for tea absolutely explodes. It's an incredibly expensive commodity, but it's something that everybody wants. So the black market for tea came in two forms: smuggling and forgery. Forgery is the odder of the two. You might be wondering, how do you go about forging tea? Especially at the time when the people of England were trying to forge tea based only on the finished product, because at this point, still, no one has any idea, except for those in China, how tea is actually grown, cultivated, harvested, and produced. So the tea forgers of England went out and started causing actual deforestation in British forests by stripping plants like slough and blackthorn of their leaves to try and recreate the finished product that was arriving on their shores via merchant ships. This wasn't perfect. It's very hard to maintain the green coloration of a plucked leaf due to the oxidation I mentioned a little bit earlier. So tea forgers had to get creative and apply things like toxic metallic dyes to their tea leaves to give them a nice green color. These would do terrible things to insides if consumed. I do not recommend it. What do you suppose you would apply to a fake black tea to give it a lovely dark mahogany hue? Any idea?
Stains.
Stains, yeah.
Ink.
Ink's a good one. Yeah. Charcoal, soot, tar, perhaps.
Charcoal.
You can. That wouldn't be too bad, right? Sadly, the real answer is so much worse. Sheep's dung is the additive of choice. Sheep's excrement is the addition of choice to make what's referred to as smooch, fake black tea. Interestingly, it's at this point in British tea drinking history that green tea finally fades out almost completely. This is the main reason why, if you go to England or indeed any country in mostly the Western Hemisphere, and you just see a cup of tea advertised on the cafe menu, almost guarantee that's a black tea, be it English breakfast, Earl Grey, or whatever. Green tea, although it was no less toxic and dangerous than the fake black tea, was way harder to detect until you swallowed it, by which time it was far too late. A careful merchant could tell if someone was trying to flog them fake black tea on account of the distinctive aroma that it might give off due to the other things that have been added to the blend. This meant that black tea became much safer to trade in and basically signed the death knell for green tea as a popular drink here in the West. Something that's lasted all the way through to the modern day. Tea smuggling, on the other hand, a little bit less disgusting, but way more bloodthirsty. You could make massive money as a tea smuggler operating in the 1730s. The amount of tea being imported between 1734 and 1736 is estimated to be between 10 and 11 million tons of tea. It was incredibly popular. This meant that the people involved in tea smuggling weren't just one or two individuals rowing a small dinghy across from France. These were massive organizations of up to 500 men who were operating massive three-masted sailing ships that would sail up to the Netherlands and bring back shipments of tea wholesale. They were also incredibly tightly knit into local communities. Everyone knew or had a member of their family who was involved in some way in the tea smuggling operation, especially on the southeast of England in counties like Kent. As a result, they were mostly safe. It was something that everyone wanted, and it was something that everyone knew someone involved with. So they were almost viewed kind of like folk heroes for quite a long time. Events like the fall of the Hawkhurst gang put an end to this. As the British government started cracking down on tea smugglers, offering massive rewards for information leading to their capture, tea smugglers started getting more and more aggressive in protecting their investments. This basically culminated in the murders of Daniel Chater and William Galley in 1737. If you like true crime dramas, look up the events of the Hawkhurst gang. It ends in spectacular fashion with a retired British soldier coming back from overseas campaigns to find the town of Hawkhurst overrun by the gang, rallying a citizens' militia and fighting a small but full-scale battle in the village churchyard between the citizens and the gang members. I'm amazed it has not been turned into a Netflix series yet. It's absolutely fascinating stuff. But during this whole time frame, tea has become steadily steadily more and more popular. And so something has to be done to get it into the hands of everyone in England, because as we know by now, England drinks so much tea. Interestingly, there are a couple of countries that drink more tea than England. Anyone has a guess?
India.
Not India.
No.
Interestingly, not India and not China either. England tops in at number 3 on the
Russia.
list.
Russia.
Not Russia. You're heading in the right direction. Second place is much closer to home.
Nice one for you.
England in this case.
Portugal.
Not Portugal. No.
No.
Even closer than that. Number 2 is Ireland. They drink about as much tea as the UK, as England does, but with a much smaller population size, it takes them ahead. Number 1 is actually a joint tie between Turkey and Iran. They consume a lot of tea, but England consumes the 3rd greatest amount of tea per capita anywhere in the world. How did we get from incredibly expensive tea to the drink of the everyman, the builder's brew, as it were? Okay, that was thanks to William Pitt the Younger, who was at one point the British Prime Minister. Under his auspices, he drafted the Commutation Act in 1784, a compact which he actually negotiated and consulted with Richard Twining I heavily on its drafting. The import taxes on tea were reduced from 119% to a mere 12.5%, drastically reducing any value in smuggling tea or in forging tea, making it not only accessible and affordable, but also safe for the vast majority of British citizens to consume, cementing tea as the popular everyman's drink. That said, there were still those hallmarks of tea drinking that were locked into high society and the realms of high etiquette, that being, of course, afternoon tea. This comes around because of one of Queen Victoria's very closest friends, the lady Anna Maria Russell, the 7th Duchess of Bedford. She is the one we credit with the creation of the British tea ceremony, because at the time, the aristocracy would only be having 2 meals a day on average. Very heavy breakfast at 7 or 8 in the morning, and a very heavy dinner at 7 or 8 in the evening. This means there's a period of time in the afternoon, I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this, where you're not actually eating or drinking all that much, and Anna Maria starts complaining of a sinking feeling around 4 p.m. in the afternoon, instructing the house servants to bring her and any of her guests tea and scones and sandwiches and small cakes, and maybe a flute of champagne if you're feeling particularly fancy about it these days. As a result, afternoon tea is established as kind of the afternoon break of choice for the aristocracy. Sometimes we call afternoon tea by another name. Does anyone remember what it is?
High tea.
High tea. We'll often hear high tea thrown around when we're talking about afternoon teas, because when you look at it, the fine silver, the fine porcelain, the 3-tiered cake stand, what could it be but high tea? When in reality, the term high tea was actually co-opted in the early 1900s as a way of turning afternoon, or what used to be known as low tea, into something a little bit more highbrow. High tea already existed, but it was actually for the working classes. It was your end of day meal enjoyed at the high table of the house, the dinner table. It was usually strong black teas with cold cuts of meat, or soups and breads, whereas afternoon or low tea would be drunk from a low trestle table in the garden or the conservatory or the lounge if you could have it. As a result, everyone in England at this point is now drinking tea as we come into the 1800s. Doesn't matter if you are the Queen of England or the working classes, everyone has their preferred cup of tea, brewed at the end of the day, brewed early in the morning, however they like it. The issue is there's still only one country on earth that produces tea, that being China. Even as far ahead as the 1800s, China is still the only country that actually produces tea and sells it out into the world at large. There was only one company allowed to trade tea from China to the British Empire, a name that rings out in British historical infamy, that being the East India Trading Company. They were the only ones allowed to trade tea from China to England, and so they had to get through the monopoly of Chinese tea production, despite them having a massive monopoly over most of the world's trade at that point. The only commodity that China would accept in exchange for its tea was silver. wanted trade bar silver from the British. As a result, the East India Company's coffers were starting to run a little bit low. They started looking for other ways to trade goods with China in exchange for the tea they wanted. Things like British-made woolen products, for example, fine knit jumpers from British woolen sheep, scientific instruments designed by the finest of British thinkers. Even, and I promise I'm not making this part up, British-made porcelain. Yes, they tried to sell China to China. This went about as well as you would expect. There is some debate between historians as to whether the emperor actually understood that what he was being shown were trade goods and not just simple presents. But supposedly his response to the East India Company was, "I set no value in these strange and useless objects." A fairly resounding no. Unfortunately, this meant that the EIC turned to far less scrupulous methods of getting what it wanted. Because it was basically a nation unto itself in India, it had ready access to vast reserves of opium. This opium it could trade illicitly onto the Chinese black market in exchange for silver. It could then melt that silver down, restamp it, and sell it back onto the open market as British silver in exchange for the tea. The so-called two flowers trade, opium for tea, decimated the Chinese economy by essentially wiping out its workforce through opioid addiction. It became such a massive problem that the emperor declared it was essentially a war on drugs. His officials stormed the 13 factories district in Guangzhou, destroying hundreds of tons of illicit opium and throwing much of it into the river to be washed out to sea. They declared the port of Canton, China's only international trading port, was closed to the East India Company. You might at this point hope that the East India Company, the engineers of a massive humanitarian crisis, might show a little remorse and reparation. No, they ran back to the British government complaining that they'd been locked out of China, and the British government responded in the only way it really knew how to at the time, by sending in the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy arrived in 1839 and the First Opium War began. It was an incredibly one-sided conflict and a significant black mark of British colonial history, and by the end of it, China had been forced to sign the Treaty of Nanjing, also known as the Unequal Treaty, because it was so incredibly one-sided. China was forced to give up several key port cities, open them to international trade, as well as give up the islands of Hong Kong, which had been seized by the British during the opium stages of the Opium War and famously remained under British control for a very long time thereafter. They also had to pay reparations to the East India Company to the tune of £21 million of silver. By pure coincidence, that just so happens to be very nearly the same total that the EIC had paid for their tea over the last 60 years. As I say, I'm sure that was a coincidence. At this point, the British government had kind of realized that having one single merchant company responsible for half the world's trade monopoly was a bit of a problem. The East India Company's monopoly was dissolved by the government, and they were scrambling to get control of the tea trade back as younger companies started to compete with this ancient trade behemoth for viability and control of the tea trade itself. They had discovered tea plants in the Assam region of India, but they had no idea how to cultivate them, let alone how to turn them into actual drinkable tea. So, to that end, they sent a spy to China in what was possibly the most audacious act of economic espionage the world will ever see. Their spy's name was Robert Fortune. He was a Scotsman, and he pretended to be a Chinese national for 5 years, traveling from garden to garden, province to province, studying how the Chinese tea workers cultivated, harvested, and processed their plants, sending back samples of saplings, seedlings, copious notes. He even convinced some Chinese tea estate workers to defect from Chinese gardens and sail to Assam in India to lend actual practical expertise to the gardens there. Multiple times his shipments were ruined by the complete incompetence of the East India Company merchants he'd sent them to, but he ultimately got the job done, and in 1888 shipments of tea from India had overtaken shipments of tea from China for the first time in history. As I say, Fortune would have absolutely been executed by the Chinese government had they figured out what he was doing. So when I say he was undercover, I mean he was pretending to be Chinese for 5 years. He committed, right? He committed to it so hard. He supposedly shaved his entire head. I've got him beat in that department. And sewed a fake ponytail into the back of his scalp to complete the illusion. He spoke a little bit of pidgin Mandarin, having visited the country several times before, because, and this is the kicker, he's not a spy. He's a botanist. He was just a plant nerd who previously worked for the Royal Horticultural Society. He had no background in espionage. His story is absolutely fascinating. And Sarah Rose, no relation, wrote a book called For All the Tea in China, How the British Stole Tea and Changed History, covering the entire story, which is absolutely fascinating. Many parts are based on Fortune's own notes, which are generally believed to be somewhat embellished. He does claim at one point that he fights off a boat of Yangtze River pirates with an unloaded pistol, a la Indiana Jones, but the story as a whole is absolutely fascinating. Now that the East India Company's era of tea commerce has come to an end, they have to face competition. Their ships could carry 1,200 tons of tea at a time, but took nearly 3 years to do the round journey from England to China and back again. Younger companies, new merchant companies, started using American-designed clipper ships instead, so named for the way they clipped the miles off the journeys, and they could do the trip in 70 to 90 days. They were so much faster, it just wasn't a competition. The last and fastest of the famous tea clippers has actually been turned into a museum in Greenwich. If anyone's in London gets a chance to go and visit her, she's called the Cutty Sark, and she did carry Twinings tea on several of occasions, I believe. The cafe still serves our tea today. But there you go. That basically brings us to the end of tea's history as an industry. After this point, it gets more and more mechanized, more and more commercialized as time goes on. I'm not sure if I've used up all my time.
Let's find out. Let's see if Dr. Jacqueline is around.
Otherwise, I will just keep going. That is both a promise and a threat.
That was just wonderful. Thank you. It was fantastic.
Hello, everyone. That was fascinating. Thank you very much. I really would like to have some hot tea right now. So, do we have any questions from anyone in the room or from ZUNETTE?
Yes, I would like to know, what do you think about the rooibos tea in South Africa?
Oh, rooibos is absolutely spectacular. It is, so many of the things we refer to as tea are not, in fact, tea in earnest. Tea on a biological level is the Camellia sinensis plant and its many varietals. Rooibos, or redbush, is a completely different species of plant. It's ideal for those people who are not so fond of maybe tea's flavor or are particularly sensitive to caffeine, as rooibos is naturally caffeine-free. It's also possessed an incredibly rich, sweet, almost creamy texture that makes it an excellent pairing with milk. So for those people who like their English breakfast tea but want something less or not at all caffeinated and maybe with a hint more sweetness, rooibos is a fantastic alternative.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for the questions, ZUNETTE. Any more questions before we bring out Adam Woods?
I just wanted to ask you something very confusing in my head. Because we do talk about the green tea,
Yes.
and there's the matcha and the sencha on one side, and then now I'm hearing about purple tea. What do you have to say about purple tea?
In terms of categories of tea, there are 6. You have your white, yellow, green, oolong, black, and pu'er or dark tea. Green tea, sencha tea, matcha, specifically sencha and matcha, it's actually going down a pyramid. Matcha is actually a form of sencha, which is actually a category of green tea. Green tea is either being sencha, steamed, Japanese word steam being sen, tea, cha, sen, steam, cha, tea. Love it. Very simple. I love Japanese teas because their names usually tell you exactly what they are. Matcha, for example, mat is roughly translated as crushed or ground. Again, cha meaning tea. It is a form of crushed or powdered tea, but it is still a green tea that has been steamed earlier in its production process. Purple tea is difficult. It is is generally considered to be a subcategory of black tea, but it does not refer to necessarily the color of the tea, but to the color of the tea leaves. Many plants have different colored leaves. You'll often find plants that have naturally occurring purple leaves, and purple tea is drawn or plucked from tea plants that have developed purple coded leaves instead of green chlorophyll color coded leaves. So yeah, the primary producers of purple tea in the world, I believe, is still currently Kenya, where the cultivar was originally kind of bred. But yeah, it's slowly spreading out into the rest of the world, and it makes it's a black tea. It's strong. It's usually quite robust. It usually has a slight astringency to it, but that is typical of kind of Kenyan or Ethiopian black teas as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you so much for the answer. We actually have one of your websites here, as it seems there are websites for each country. So people can go here and they can purchase products. And also, Liam, you have been a guest on Live, Learn, Teach, Inspire, and you did a full episode actually right there with all the teas and showing us exactly what to do. So people can find that on any of our platforms where USA Global TV and Radio streams, also on the British School of Excellence YouTube channel. So please do go to the website, which is for people listening on a podcast platform. It is http twinings.co.uk if you are in the UK. Otherwise, you can Google for your country. Thank you so much. Liam, anything you'd like to share with us before we bring out our next guest?
If you want to learn any more about the history of tea or go into more detail on those 6 categories, please come on down to the 216 Strand store. Either myself or one of the other brilliant brand ambassadors would be happy to book you on for our masterclass, which is the 2-hour session where you do that full deep dive into both the history of tea and each of the 6 categories. And of course, you get to taste all 6 as you go through. So you come away with a deep understanding of how tea tastes, how it's processed, and of course, the etiquette in drinking it as well.
Thank you so much for that wonderful invitation. I hope everyone does take you up on it. We are moving on to the next part of our show. Now that everybody is all revved up hearing all about the history of tea, we are going to welcome Adam Woods to the program. He is a camera confidence coach, and he has been with us here at the British School of Excellence in Mayfair, London, working with us to understand how to be camera ready. Many times people are very shy. They lack the confidence. As soon as they hear something about, I'm going to be in front of a camera, we freeze up. So Adam really helps break down your why, how to get your message across. He has extensive experience. He has worked with some of the major brands in the world. He has been with National Geographic, Discovery Channel, et cetera, et cetera. We could go on and on. Without further ado, Adam, welcome to the program. Hello.
Hi, good to see you all again. Fantastic to be in the room. And I just so you know, I've got my cup of tea with me.
What kind of tea are you drinking, Adam?
It's Twinings Assam. I believe around sort of 3:30, 4 o'clock. Assam is my tea of tea of choice. So good to be here and great to hear the history, Liam. I'm definitely coming down to 216 Strand soon.
I will look forward to having you.
Thank you so much, Adam. Appreciate that. We're going to spotlight you, Adam. You and I met in person. Obviously, the lovely people here also met in person. ZUNETTE, that's going to happen soon. And you were so kind and so thoughtful, and you have a process where you really make people feel comfortable to go in front of the camera. Can you please give a little bit of background about how you came to this profession in terms of working one-on-one or with groups? I know you have extensive experience in film, but can you talk a little bit about being the confidence camera coach that you are today?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Jacqueline, and great to be with you on your live this afternoon. I've spent a career behind the camera as a director, mainly making TV commercials for CNN. And more lately, making charity ads, charity videos, and kind of human films. The thing that interests me most about film and television is the humans that are in front of the camera. So I spent a lifetime putting humans in front of the camera, and was really interested in the nerves that people have around being in front of the camera, how that comes about, but also how to master that in order to kind of really bring your full self, your authentic self to the camera. Because as a filmmaker, when that happens, it's a beautiful thing, is that, we get kind of share really authentically from the heart. So I decided to, as well as continuing to film, is try and see if I could create a process that would help people everyday people, that we're all everyday people, master any nerves and anxiety, and also turn up being really clear on what they want to share and really in the moment, very present, and share, you know, from your heart to an audience. And these days, Dr. Jack, as I'm sure you're aware, we're all broadcasters now. 20 years ago, you know, going live on television took, you know, an army of trucks and cameras and lights, but now we can all go on our mobile phones around the world at the click of a button. So I find that a lot of my clients are wanting, or maybe not wanting to be on screen, but actually know that they need to get their message across to audiences that are out there watching on screen.
Thank you so much, Adam. I would love to have you share some of your key takeaways and the feedback that you have for our cohorts and for myself. As I mentioned, you have this process, you have this endearing quality that you really are empathetic and compassionate. It's that high level of emotional intelligence where you're able to quickly make a relationship with someone and have people feeling comfortable. So what are some key takeaways that you can share about your experience here this week with the British School of Excellence?
Yeah, I mean, whatever I bring personally to the table, I'm not, as it were, that aware of. It's just, you know, it's just a habit that's grown over the years of experience of putting many people in front of the camera. So I guess for me, the key thing is that anyone can master the art of connecting empathically and emotionally with audiences around the world through mastering one's own mindset around dealing with the natural nerves. You know, it is very natural. There's something about, you know, appearing in front of camera which has that sort of energy about it, or nerve-wracking energy sometimes. And I also have used to much more struggle with that. So not only master one's own nerves, but also be really clear and concise about what one wants to get across. And clarity and preciseness are the kind of qualities that I help my clients bring, so that it connects really quickly and really energetically. And energetically, it means like it's sort of they feel you, the sense of actually feeling like an audience is in the room with you. So that's the quality I work with my clients in order that they really connect with audiences and form relationships, really. I mean, we're all needing to be on screen these days. Lockdown, the global lockdown provided us with an opportunity, as it were, to feel more connected, even though we were all separated, as it were, through having to be locked down in wherever we happen to be living. But this power of electronic communication, which, you know, has its pluses and minuses in the sense of feeling, you know, just dislocated from other people, wanting to be in person with them but not being able to. But I know through my work, working with clients and teams around the world, that you can develop real empathy and connection through the screen. It just requires a consciousness and a sense of one's own clarity. And I've got a process that I can happily share very briefly. Thank you. So I use the acronym CAMERA. It's a handy reckoner. It's actually derived from my work as an advertising TV commercials director. It's a briefing form of getting really clear, powerful communication. So more clear on our why, I'll call it why are we? Perhaps some of the ladies in the room or virtually can talk to this, because having experienced working with me earlier this week, getting really clear on your why and being really clear on the audience you're talking to, as in the one person. Because a lot of recording videos, basically you're staring down a little green light in my laptop at the moment. I'm not really with you. So getting really clear on who the audience is and your message and the kind of single-minded clarity of that message. Once you've got those kind of things mastered, as it were, in your mind before you come live or go on video or record things, it really helps you bring a kind of different energy and a really concise and sort of directive energy to your communication. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing this visual. I'd like to go over to Liam for just a moment, and then I'm going to go over to our the trainer graduates. Super exciting. So Liam, in the course of your work, when I observed you on Live, Learn, Teach, Inspire, you're very hands-on. You've got a number of things there in your studio that you're working with and demonstrating. Can you share a little bit about how you didn't let your nerves or your feelings at the time when you first started interfere with your ability to display your product line and give people an understanding of what it is that Twinings offers?
I had a leg up in that regard because before I came to work for Twinings, I was a teacher for 11 years. Once you face down a classroom of 48-year-olds, a small group of adults listening to you talk about tea really doesn't pose any kind of challenge at all. It also helps that it's something that I am deeply passionate about. I am deeply invested in telling people about tea and explaining the things that I know about tea to other people so they can kind of share in that passion to even a limited extent. And I feel that if you are excited about the thing you're talking about, other people are going to feel that excitement as well. You're going to kind of pull them on board and they'll join the good ship tea drinking one way or another. Yeah, and if you've got that investment in the products that you're selling, in the stuff you're talking about, people can't help but get swept along and join you on that journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So what I'm hearing is it's a belief in yourself, having a why, and being passionate about what you're doing, getting out of bed every day and saying, yes, I can't wait to do what it is I'm doing. So I'd like to go over to Leanne. Leanne, you are obviously an integral part of the British School of Excellence. You've been around working with Philip and the team for a while, and you've seen so many people from across the world come through the doors of the British School of Excellence. Tell us what key takeaways you have from working with Philip and the team this week.
Every time we have a trainer group, it's an exceptional experience. And I usually say to our students on the Monday, you're coming in as one person. By Friday, you're going to be a completely different person. And everybody looks at me and thinks, really? And by Friday, we have arrived at that destination, and it's always the same. So we are so privileged to have the most incredible people that we work with on a regular basis from all walks of life. And it has been exceptional this week. It's been wonderful meeting ANAHITA, getting to know her, observing her working together with Adam while he unpacked her presentation. Dr. ONIKE has been absolutely amazing. So, we believe that the kind of people we attract into this organization are exceptional. And our role and goal is to get them out into the world and to help to be change makers. We don't see ourselves as teaching etiquette or training trainers, but we want to really create a global movement to make the world a better place. So it's bigger than all of that. So we are very passionate about what we do. We say that we don't go to work, we go to fun. We don't do work, we make things happen. And it has been fantastic making things happen with these incredible ladies this week.
Thank you so much, Leanne. That's fantastic. And obviously, bringing in Liam, bringing in Adam, bringing in people from various walks of life and different professions to the British School of Excellence, and for the Train the Trainer programs for people like myself to have awareness of areas that, even though I'm a broadcaster, I learned a lot from Adam. Even though I drink tea, I learned a lot from Liam. So it really is terrific the way that you've been able to bring everyone together. So thank you so much for that. I'd like to go over to my cohorts, and I'd like to start with Zunette, who is all the way. How far is it, Zunette? I don't even know. It's like,
I don't even know as well.
So you're in Cape Town, and you have been joining us virtually. You have been so bright, and you've been so focused. And I know sometimes being remote, it's not as easy to pay attention, but you've been spot on. Can you share with us, how is it you came to learn about the British School of Excellence, and how did you decide to pick this organization for this Train the Trainer program?
Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. Good afternoon, everybody. I decided that I'm actually an etiquette coach, but I realized that I needed more because I want to train, and I want to do Train the Trainer course. And I started doing my research, and I stumbled across the British School of Excellence, and I never looked back. This course was just amazing. It was exceptional. From my first talk to Leanne, where she convinced me that this is the right choice. And what I've learned this past week is mind-blowing. I thought I was just going to come in and learn about etiquette, but I ended up learning more about myself. I learned how to throw my voice. I learned how to elevate think. And I realized that all of us judge other people. I never thought of myself of judging people, but this course taught me that I need to look at my judging other people, and I need to look at my listening, my elevated listening. The camera confidence was amazing. Adam kept on asking me why, and I got my why. So I just I can just say thank you for this whole week. It was amazing. It was exceptional. And from Philip through to Leanne and all the other ladies, the only thing that you make me feel welcome all the time, but the only thing that I'm very disappointed in is all the stuff that you ate in front of me. I need to come and go and see where I should eat with you.
Thank you, Zunette. It was quite a bit that we've had to eat. The good news is here in London that Mr. Philip is a very fast walker. So I know Leanne and I just go. So let's move on to Anahita. When you first came to the course, I'm not going to disclose what you shared, but you had some concerns about being on camera. And you went right for it, whether you wanted to or not. You actually embraced that role with the camera. How are you feeling now that you confronted your fear and actually were able to record, and you're still here today with us?
I'm feeling great today. Thank you so much. Compared to the time I reached here, which was on Monday, I'd like to thank everyone in this room, because I came here for a purpose, and I feel like I'm going back with a purpose. The purpose I came here for is to gain confidence, and I think I have gained that. And my purpose to go back home is to change people's lives. I hope that gets fulfilled as well. I'd like to thank every single person who's touched my life in this room. Leanne, my first conversation with you when I was back in India, it was incredible. Just one conversation got me on a flight, and I was here. That's how good she is. I've had lovely, genuine people around me, and very, very supportive, loving family. This course has changed my life. I've met the most brilliant people. I have to mention Mr. Adam. He really got me there. I have never experienced being behind the camera in such a way in my life. I never thought that it was so tough to actually embrace yourself in a situation where you really feel the empathy, you really feel sympathy, and you really feel all those things. And I don't know how he guided us through all that, but he did a great job. It was magical. So thank you so much for that. Jacqueline, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. A few things which you had said about boundaries, about certain skill sets, about listening, I'm going to take all that back home, and I'm going to try and use it as much as possible. Mr. Philip, thank you so much. I mean, you've been awesome in trying to, keep me within the class, make me feel wanted, making me share all our experiences together. I've really, really had a wonderful, wonderful time here. And thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done. You've supported me in everything that we were here for. And when I entered here, I felt like I was in a room of strangers, but I'm taking back a family with me. And I know that in the future, I will always have someone in Ireland. I will always have someone in Cape Town. I would always have someone in the UK for me. And that's amazing. And you guys have somebody in India for you. So that's just one of those things. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And just from human to human, it's been wonderful watching you just blossom. So please do take that away with you. We are moving over to our global traveler. You have been so many places, Dr. ONIKE, and you obviously have extensive experience in speaking with people. You are in an industry, wealth management, you guide people, and you're out in the public. So what is someone like you who already has a very long CV of experience, what are you doing in this course, and what are your key takeaways?
Thank you very much for this question. I'm so happy to be here, and the saddest thing of it all is that all good things are coming to an end when we should say this should be the start of new beginnings. But what I'm really grateful for in terms of what has been taught, what has been digested for me, are two main subject topics. The first is the big difference that I've always ignorant of, which is the EQ, emotional intelligence, and the importance it is actually in our space of work. We normally would always want to think about the IQ side. We want to see your CV. We really want to see how intelligent you are. And most of the times, the CV is just a marketing tool. But how do you relate with your colleagues? The interpersonal skills, intercommunication skills, this has always been ignored, and this is really, I should say, the most important of it all, because you normally learn on the job anyway. So emotional intelligence for me was key. The second is the business etiquette. There is so much that has been lacking in my professional life that I've learned here. I pick up a business card, I just put it in my pocket without even looking at the name, and I will start saying, "Oh, hi, my dear, how are you?" When I should have easily had just few seconds to look at the name, look at the line of business, and then engage fully. So these are my takeaways. But last but by no means the least is what you have actually explained to us. And what is that? Engage in elevating your listening skills. No multitasking. Look, feel engaged. Eat, and digest. This is what I've learned, and I can assure you that I'll always go with this in my mind, looking at your eye, seeing what it is, the eyes and the, as we were taught, the triangular shape of the face to be fully engaged. I am really delighted.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really do appreciate it. We're actually at the end of our episode, and I just want to thank each and every one of you for all the contributions that you've made this week, and for personally how you've changed my life and expanded my knowledge when it comes to different parts of the world, different cultures, how to engage with one another, and also that at our very core, we are human beings, human doings, and we all want the same thing, which is to find some way to have peace in this world. And so I thank you. Philip, I want to thank you for the hospitality. For those of you who don't know, he has been hosting me in his home for all of this time that I've been here. Leanne, you are my soul sister. We've been together through so many things, and I'm looking forward to running through the streets of London again very soon. So Philip, I'll turn it over to you as we close out for today.
Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. And it actually was quite a pleasure to host you. Maybe you'll get an invitation again to come back. It's been remarkable having you here in the United Kingdom along with Leanne, and the privilege of meeting these incredible women that we've had the privilege of working with is just extraordinary. It really and truly is. To all the people that make this organization what it is. And yes, we've got the platform, but it's the people who walk through the door. And now, as we move into the final straits of this year, these students will join our alumni platform, where there will be a network, where there'll be people to bounce ideas off, to grow businesses with, to travel the world with. Recently, I received an amazing book from a couple of students, and should I say a couple, if you just bear with me for just a second, this is the power of incredible collaboration in every sense of the word. And just the other day, I received this book, Around the World with Etiquette. And this started off with a cohort of incredible students who were hosted in 2019. And two of them said, "Why don't we write a book?" And the room lit up like a light bulb. They then all got together and started talking about this book. They then approached me, or I approached them, and I said, we can introduce you to numerous students from almost every corner of the world. Literally, we have been that blessed. And in this book, you can see this is a doorstopper. It's not a book that you would sort of pack in a 23-kilogram suitcase, because it'll put you over to about 25 kilos. But at the end of the day, it came with a beautiful note. I had the privilege of writing the foreword, And this is the power of connection and collaboration. And this is the power of the people that walk through the door here at the organization. And it is so far removed from what people might look at as etiquette. As Dr. Nikita said, this is how do we perform? How do we approach ourselves, and how do we put ourselves out there? And it's that human connection that we need in this world. And it boils down to Maya Angelou's quote: people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how they made you feel. And with that, I would like to thank all of you for being here, to Joshua, who's been here through and through, all the trainers, our cameraman, Dr. Jacqueline for hiking all the way from the USA, Adam for coming in along with Michelle all the way from Ireland, Leanne, who travels a lot, coming over to be with us. And it's just phenomenal. We really do live for this. And tomorrow's a sad day because we generally wake up on a Saturday and something's missing. And what's missing is we're not engaging with our amazing students in a sort of personal level. And as earlier, ZUNETTE has been outstanding, you know, as she's definitely owed a big box of whatever snacks and chocolates from the cohort of the students. And we will get together in the not distant future, that's for sure. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. We're going to go over to your website, and I know you have some exciting things that are coming up in 2025. What can you share with us about what to expect for people who want to join the program and for people who are already graduates and have other opportunities to learn more?
Well, on the website, it's very easy to navigate around, but some of the key things coming up next year will be the mid-year London tour, where I'm praying and hoping everyone can start visualizing this opportunity to really just come out to the UK, and mixture of sort of edutainment, where we will do some education, we'll do some entertainment, we will go into some really beautiful places in the United Kingdom that the public aren't really overly introduced to on their visits to London. We go to Twinings, we will go on the British Pullman, we will go to Royal Ascot, we go to the oldest hatter in the world, we go to the oldest perfume house in the world, we do the most beautiful things around men's clothing, cigars, whiskey, and that's just scratching the surface. So it really is an absolute treat. Along with our Train the Trainer program, we will be running a couple of live in-person Train the Trainers. We're looking to launch one live in New York in the very near future, and then live back here in London, and we're looking for another destination. We will still continue to do the online Zoom. It does work. I think from ZUNETTE's experience and from past experience where we've been very successful in running the online Zoom Train the Trainer and coaching, it has worked phenomenally. So those are just two things that I can share right now, along with our Polish Professional and all the other courses that we are very fortunate to have put together.
Thank you very much, Philip. Adam Woods, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you, and who would be an ideal client for you?
Oh, thanks so much. And Philip, thank you so much for inviting me into your really amazing training programs. It's such a gift. So yeah, my email's there. I work with business owners, solopreneurs, and leaders who wish to expand their presence online. So whether that's through speaking to live audiences through lives like this, or through creating videos that will sit and influence people. And the people that I feel guided to work with are those that, as I think Leanne talked about, making the world a better place. Those great words which are, be the change you want to see in the world. So for all the people we work together on Wednesday together, I'm really privileged to work with you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your growth and carrying that message that's inside of you out across the world to make, as you say, make the world a better place.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing what future collaborations come out of this group here today. ZUNETTE, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you, and who would you like to partner with?
They can send me an email to my email. I am zunettestyle.co.za. And I would like to partner with other etiquette coaches, especially in South Africa, because my dream is to become the global partner of the British School of Excellence, the country partner in South Africa. So if we can get together and we can make that dream work, I think it will be fantastic. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Liam, you already put out a fabulous offer. Would you mind please repeating it? Where can people go to meet you and to learn more?
Yeah, if you want to come down to the 216 store for the Twinings Strand, you're more than welcome to drop in. We've got the tasting bar open as long as the day is long, so we've always got tea to try on the shop floor itself. The master classes are usually open for booking. Will be closed between Christmas and New Year, but starting in 2025, that'll pick up again as of the 2nd of January. They usually book up about 2 to 3 weeks in advance, so if you do want to book your space, if you're coming to visit London, make sure you get a call in ahead of time. Otherwise, you can find me on Instagram at Adventure Brewing. Aside from that, it's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And Anahita, as your journey of entrepreneurship is flourishing now, who is an ideal client for you and how can they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me via my email, which is lalanahita@gmail.com. And I would love to get in touch with Philip and try and make this work in India as well. We need a lot of this in India, and I hope to take that back with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Doctor from the Ivory Coast, Dr. ONIKE, how can people get in touch with you and who is a good client for you?
All clients are good, as we all know. So there is nothing like a bad client. onikita@outlook.com is my email contact. And as we all are looking up forward to Philip,
Yes.
I would really love for Philip to come and see what Abidjan is made of in terms of class, in terms of style, but there is also that gap that we need to fill. And that gap is good manners and etiquette.
Thank you so much. And Leanne, the foundation of the British School of Excellence, how can people reach out to you to get involved in future programs and to open their own country partnership?
Well, of course, we're on the website. My email address is leanne@the British School of Excellence. We welcome inquiries for country partnerships. There are plenty of opportunities. We've also got several levels. So there are different investment options. So if anybody who's interested, please make contact with me.
Thank you very much. And Philip, over to you before I close out the show.
Right. Well, just wishing everyone the most wonderful weekend and safe travels back to your home countries. And I wish you a very wonderful birthday in the very near future.
Thank you.
I really do. The 19th of November. All right.
Thank you.
And Dr. Jacqueline, safe travels back to the United States of America, where you're going to be opening your own live, drum roll, studio.
Television station. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I just want to close out our show before we go over to our sponsors and just share with you that if you told me 4 years ago, I would be here in London with these incredible people and we would be live streaming a television show, I never would have believed it. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to get out of your comfort zone, to do things that really challenge you. We've seen such tremendous growth here this week at the British School of Excellence in London. And in this journey that I've had with USA Global TV and Radio, just being completely online and now opening a studio, people told me I could never do it. We're always going to hear that from people because people don't want to get out of their own way and they're judging. But I believe in each and every person who believes that they can make a difference in this world. So when we think about emotional intelligence, compassion, empathy, that's what we stand for. That's what the British School of Excellence stands for. And we are just so happy and grateful for each and every one of you who are watching our shows, who are listening to our shows, and who are serving others and making a difference in the world. I want to thank, obviously, the British School of Excellence and everybody here who is in the room across the hallway or across the world. Thank you again. We're going to hear from Mr. Philip Sykes about the polished professional. Stay tuned as coexistence and sustainability is coming up right after this. USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents our partner and sponsor, Mr. Philip Sykes and the British School of Excellence. Building confidence, changing lives. And now, proudly presenting the Polished Professional.
On a transformative journey with the British School of Excellence's comprehensive suite of masterclasses, crafted to elevate your professional and personal life. 8 outstanding modules will elevate you to the next level. Module 1, Exploring Life's Purpose, delves into the depths of self-discovery, guiding you to chart your unique path to fulfillment and success. Module 2, Mastering Professional Presence and Confidence. This masterclass is a deep dive into the art of self-assurance and commanding presence, which is essential for standing out in today's competitive landscape. Module 3, Learn the Secrets of Visual Impact, how to curate a personal style that amplifies your professional brand. Module 4, Mastering Professional Etiquette and Communication Excellence, navigating the nuances of corporate interaction with grace and tact. Module 5, Elegance in Eloquence. We impart powerful techniques to captivate and persuade any audience with your oratory skills. Module 6, Unlock the potential of your emotional intelligence, EQ, and harness the ability to connect, empathize, and lead with emotional savvy. Module 7, Mastering DISC, building a gateway to understanding behavioral styles, fostering better personal and professional relationships. Module 8, Mastery in Dining Etiquette, building your confidence to perfect the subtleties of dining with finesse, enhancing your social savviness at any table. Step into the Polished Professional program where poise, elegance, and excellence aren't just taught, they're instilled for life. Join us to redefine your potential and polish your professional edge.
To learn more, go to thebritishschoolofexcellence.com. The British School of Excellence are investors in people. Let us invest in you.